conversation, and I'm very excited this week because we have both Melissa Smith here with us. We have Melissa Smith in her, I think, third show, right?
Something like that. Yeah. I just can't stay away because you let me swear in public.
And then we have Melissa Smith from HD23, who we tried to have on before, but we were having storms that night, and it was such a mess. So welcome back. I'm super excited to have you. I'm going to start off tonight with this little gem that was dropped by our dear friend, Human Scrotum. Brad Cheetah said, "The womb is the only organ in a woman's body that serves no specific purpose to her life or well-being."
As a uterus owner, I wholeheartedly disagree.
Fair.
Well, I would say too that one of the most enduring myths of the patriarchy is that human life and women came from Adam's rib, when the truth is y'all came from the womb. So I disagree wholeheartedly with what Brad has said.
Right, I do as well. The interesting part that I see in this is that it serves no specific purpose to her life or well-being.
God.
Okay.
So that is so funny. Not had a womb because, oh my God, let's start with our periods because it's a taboo to talk about that. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you about how important that womb health care and being healthy is to your everyday well-being. And how many times have people said, "Oh, she must be on the rag because she's doing this, that, or the other thing." That's directly related to our wombs, Brad. So
it must be that time of month.
Yeah, it must be that time of month for him.
Exactly. It's the time of the month where the white fragility just comes out and he cracks like an egg.
Also, womb care does not end. The health of the womb continues to matter past menopause.
Correct.
It will kill us if we don't take care of it.
Mm-hmm. What cracks me up about this is that it's the level of lack of education that's involved in it. And I will be... To be quite clear, I am a product of the Helena school system. I, had a health class. They told me that if I had gay sex, I would get AIDS and die, although it was called GRIDS at the time. So not the greatest in the whole world. But the lack of education that surrounds the vagina is so astounding to me because, I obviously, being gay, I don't have a vagina in my relationships on a regular basis. Haven't spent a lot of time investigating them. Off doing other things, as one can imagine. But like my dear friend who just had a baby, she was talking about how for the next 6 weeks, she's going to be bleeding and smelling like meat. And I'm like, I don't understand. And that sounds horrible. What the hell is wrong? And she's like, oh, nothing's wrong. I'm just healing from having a baby. It's not the miracle of birth. It's the trauma of birth. And nobody gets out without any trauma. And I was like, okay, that's great. Tell me more, because now I'm interested, because now it sounds like a really great script to a horror movie. I was not wrong.
No.
And it's disturbing because everybody's like, oh, she had a baby. She'll be back at work in 2 days. No. The lack of education around this. And this ties back into another fact that just absolutely blows my mind. It makes me crazy. And this is that Grey's Anatomy, which is a book. I'm not talking about the series. I'm talking about the actual book. That was used to teach anatomy and still is. It's a great piece of education. But from 1910 until somewhere in 1985, 87, somewhere in there, it didn't even have the vagina in it.
Nope.
So you have people who have literal titles, OBGYN, whose main source of information about the main thing they work on didn't have that main thing in it. This is a problem. Yeah. And then you wonder why politicians who couldn't make it through biology class are out thinking that they should be allowed to make some sort of law about somebody else's body. It's none of your fucking business, Brad.
No.
He's the worst. Anyway, so welcome to another week when our privacy rights have gone out the window and everybody's just up in arms. And how are things in Great Falls, Melissa?
Well, in Great Falls, we actually had a little bit of controversy from the other side. Yes. Yeah, this is fun. So we had a 4th of July parade, and when the road decision was overturned, we had a quick rally on the Central Avenue Bridge, which is the place we like to do a rally, and we got all these new people. And then we had the one that was on Sunday, which was kind of a national organized event. And the girls and boys, because it was great. We had men, we had women, we had babies, we had little kids, it was really a lot of different and a very diverse crowd for the Sunday march. And they all said, well, we want to do something more, and we want to march in the parade. Well, I'm sure we're all aware of Lola Sheldon Galloway. She happens to be the parade organizer. So we were like, you know what? If you say that you want to march in the parade and this is what you want to do, Lola will go, canceled. She will not accept it. So we said, but hey, why don't you walk behind our float? Because we're Democrats. We believe in this. Many of the candidates spoke at either the rally or the other march, and we're for privacy rights. So you just need to keep it a little family friendly. We don't want some F words and things like that. And so we had a sign making session over at the LGBTQ plus center here in Great Falls, and everything was respectful, and they were behind. They all dressed in black. I don't know if you heard about that movement, like, dress on black. So they were all in black. So there were these goth chicks and men and babies carrying signs, and Lola and her little cadre lost their minds. And we got the wonderful East City Beat with Rick Tryon. Do you guys know Rick Tryon and East City Beat?
What a waste of space and dance.
Yes, and they went completely nuts. And people were like writing into them and saying, but when should you protest? I mean, the 4th of July parade to protest about your independence, that's the best time to do it. They were respectful. I mean, I wasn't offended. We don't know what you're talking about. Why was this so horrible? It's a family-friendly event. And at a family-friendly event, you can't talk about vaginas and wombs, evidently. So
I would point out is literally, of course, where families come from.
I know.
I don't know. Apparently, Rick doesn't understand that babies aren't delivered by fucking stork.
No, he does, because we have storks flying over the Missouri, and that's where we're getting all our children. Anywho, so we had a little bit of a blowback, but what was so exciting is how normal people in Great Falls just wouldn't put up with it. They said, no, you're wrong. What was wrong with that? And if not at the 4th of July parade, when, Rick, would it be appropriate? Or Philip, East City Beat. And they turned off the comments because they weren't getting any support.
Good job.
Yeah.
Well done.
Moment.
Oh, fragile little Rick and fragile little Brad. So sad for them. What's new over in Billings, Melissa?
Oh God, we've been so busy. Well, let's see. Have we talked since Pride?
In Billings?
In Billings.
No.
Pride was phenomenal. It was by far the largest and most inclusive Pride event I have ever seen in Billings.
Cool.
Far cry from like 3 years ago when the city didn't even block off the streets for the parade, and we had to have volunteers stand and block traffic. And this time it was like there were events all over town. They were for different ages, for different interest groups. We did have we might not have talked about this. There was the drag queen storytelling at the zoo.
I was at the zoo, yeah.
Yes. And there were 20 maybe counter protesters. The zoo had 5,000 people that day. It was a good day.
Exactly.
And then the Pride Festival itself was huge. We gained 50 volunteers that day.
Nice.
For the Democrats. Yeah, it was a good week.
Nice.
Yes.
I heard amazing things about it. I wasn't able to get over there for it because I had so many other things going on. I was like, I need to not be around people. But I talked to my friends that were over there that were performing, that were helping out with setting things up. I did talk to Walt Donges. He's the president of 406 Pride. And they did an amazing job. They had a lot of really, really good things happen. I think the pushback on the drag queen story hour, nobody really expected it to go that way, because the bigots have attacked us kind of freehand for a long time. And they're like, well, we're going to attack the trans community, and we're going to attack the drag community, and we're going to call you all pedophiles and groomers, and nobody's going to stop us. And that was not true. You got stopped hard. And, Yeah, I heard there were 20 protesters over there. One of the things that I do want to make sure that people know, because I have reached out to Walt on this one, I was like, why was the sheriff delivering water over there?
Oh, I know that one, and Walt probably told you.
Well, what I heard, and I will continue it because I want to believe the best in people, but I have not heard from the sheriff yet, is that they needed water and the sheriff delivered it, and they took the pictures and put it on social media implying that he was supporting them, but he was just delivering water because not only are they bigots, but they're unprepared bigots who forgot to bring water in the middle of a hot day in Billings in summer when you're out by the zoo where they don't have a random sprinkler system going on because they have a lot of animals and so they control all that stuff, and you will die in the heat. And the
And it
sheriff,
was stupid hot that day.
human being, said, "Oh, I'll get them some water so they don't die." A choice was made. I think it was the wrong one.
So the optics were bad.
Yeah, the optics are bad.
I actually heard directly from Walt about that too, because I was very vocally upset about that. But actually, it was Walt who explained that he had had a conversation with the sheriff, reminding him that these people are suffering and that in a certain way, they kind of need our compassion because, like, we're partying and having fun and enjoying a huge community, and they're just unhappy. And so that's what inspired the sheriff to go and show compassion to them. But then the whole picture made shit look bad. Plus, all of the news media outlets gave equal weight to the counter protesters, the 20 counter protesters, with the 5,000 people who were enjoying the event. And that was really frustrating that they gave equal real estate to that.
Yeah, that's annoying. I might have to reach out to some friends of mine that are in the media, especially a certain friend of mine who did a show and then got upset that I called out a statement that they had because they're not concerned citizens, they're bigots. Anyway, so Pride happened. It was a good Pride. Everybody seemed like they were having a really good time. Everybody that went there from the other parts of the state were happening. One of the interesting things, I don't know if you both know, because I run Pride here, Montana Pride here for Helena. And this year we had the most number of prides happen in the state in 1 year. We had Missoula, Livingston, the Flathead area, Kalispell Whitefish, Anaconda, Butte, Billings, and what's the other one? Shelby? Libby, of all places. And that's super exciting because it's not like we're only gay in June. That's my month. I'm gay. Get out of the way. July comes around. Oh, I guess I have to go back. No, it doesn't work that way. Gay all the time. So it's nice to see some visibility happening across the state and around the year. It's no big deal. Yeah. So so there's that. What else has been going on?
I mean, protests like every other day.
What are we protesting? Things seem so sunny and delightful, like nothing could have taken us back 50 years. Okay, let's actually talk about one of the other rulings, because the whole overturning of Roe v. Wade ties into a whole bunch of things. And we can go into that, and we will definitely talk it to death. But let me preface this really quick. How are the two of you when you get into the legislature? Because we know you're both going to win because you're running great campaigns, you're raising good money, you're talking to lots of people, and everybody is fed up with the patriarchy, of which you are very much fed up as well. What are you going to do for bills that come in right away? Are there bills that you are thinking of proposing that are literally going to bump into these things? Specifically privacy and Roe v. Wade.
Well, I'll go first. So what I would say, and what I've been saying on the doors and what I've been saying in meetings and things with people, is that I don't have any specific bills right now, but what I'm going to be so passionate about is protecting the Montana Constitution. And that's for a whole host of reasons. And the privacy one, of course, is the major one. And try to squelch if I happen to be in a committee that was trying to put one of these bills on, doing everything I could to not have it kill it in committee. Because, here's the thing, it's really hard to start thinking, at least for me right now, about what actual bills I'm going to write. So, but I do know that they're going to go after our Constitution, even if we manage to, like, they don't have a super majority, they're still going to go after it, and that's what they're going to do. And one of the things we keep thinking about is, you have these rights, like, for example, a clean and healthful environment, and we just undermine them every day. So, for example, people got really lackadaisical in Bozeman and decided the Gallatin River didn't need protecting. And, it's just crazy. And this is how we have this right, but unless you fight for the rights, unless you put in bills that are going to protect those rights, they're going to be chipped away from you. And the environmental ones are just nuts. And I'll just say one other thing about that too. So, we're very upset about Roe, and rightly so. It's a terrible decision. But I don't know if you've ever heard Tucker Carlson say something about the fact that, white people aren't having children.
Try not to listen to him.
Yeah.
Fertility is down and all these things. Well, do you know why fertility is down? Because we don't protect our water. And there are forever chemicals in our water, and they've been in since the 1950s. And those just get passed down. So if your grandmother had a baby in the 50s and was exposed to PFAS, well, guess what? Her daughter has them. And then guess what? Your granddaughter has them. And then your great-granddaughter. And they directly affect fertility and both sperm count and both your ability to carry a pregnancy to term. So in some ways, I'm like, keep poisoning the water, boys, because you know what? It won't matter about Roe because no one will even be able to get pregnant. This is kind of where we are right now, and how we are just letting the world be poisoned, metaphorically, spiritually, the environment.
Literally.
So, anywho.
Yeah. Everything Melissa just said, I am 100% the same. The environment is, in my opinion, and the number one reason why I signed up to run, is our most critical issue of our time. And it does affect all the other political issues that people might think are more important. The lack of clean air and water, the inaccessibility to open and wild spaces, the destruction of environments for our wildlife will trickle down and make our human quality of life worse exponentially year after year after year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things so I get on an environmental kick. I love this. How bad can the environment get? Well, let me talk to you for a minute. There was an interesting proposal actually that, because I can talk about how it gets bad all over the place. But let's talk about one of the ways that it could be good. One of the things that I saw today was a study that was done showing how much land is in use as parking spaces.
Oh, God, I know.
And how much electricity would be generated if we just put solar over those, which would protect the cars and the people using the parking spaces from inclement weather. And the amount is enough that ERCOT wouldn't be having the problems in Texas right now that it's having, because every single system that would be near it would have solar near it, so it could help cool it, which I think is just an amazing statistics of basically things are bad, and I get that they're bad, but they could be so much better if you just did the base level bullshit that we've been asking for since solar panels were invented in the 50s. Like, if you want to take us back to the 50s, take us back to we just invented solar panels and we want to put them on everything. That's at least a useful choice.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to tell my solar panel story. So I grew up in Havre, and Havre is, extremely cold. My dad
has it. One solar panel.
So in the 1970s, my dad, he was an electrical engineer, and also he taught math at Northern College. I still call it Northern Montana College, MSU Northern.
And we had a discussion on that. It's Northern Montana College. It's fine.
It's like, it's so irritating.
It's still EMC here at Billings.
Lucky you. Anyway, so my dad decided one winter with our tiny garage to experiment. He built his own solar panels. He put them on, and his goal was to keep the garage, anywhere from 42 to 47. Just keep it in that range.
Above freezing, but not comfortable.
Yeah, so so the car would not. Yeah, so we wouldn't have to plug in the car like you normally had to do in Havre. You had to plug in all your vehicles all winter long. So anyway, he did that. He put the solar panels on, and for an entire year, despite it might be 40 below, 45 below, horrible below. 20 below is kind of normal everyday weather. We kept the garage within that range. Those were
with solar panels that he built in the 70s. He's like, well, here, let's look at this. And I would remind people that the reason that we're cold in the winter, especially in Havre, is not because like frost giants come in and shit on everything. It's because the tilt of the planet has the sun's energy glancing off at an angle instead of hitting and absorbing and creating warmth. So it's not even direct sunlight that's doing this, and yet it's enough sunlight to do the thing that most people would really like. Like literally, this is the thing that kills me. You put this stuff up and it's like, oh, well, I have a place for my car and I can put simple, boundaries around it, like cloth and whatnot to keep it warm. And then I don't need an auto starter to start my car, which burns extra gas to get it warm so that I don't freeze my fingers as I'm driving to work in the morning. Because my boss, who's an asshole, makes me come into my office to work, I would point out that I work for myself. But
fire that boss. Come on.
I keep trying to, but he knows where I sleep.
I suggest you unionize.
I was going to ask, you must unionize. What is wrong?
Unfortunately, I also manage myself and manage qualify for a union. It's very sad.
Yeah, Paula Pounce used to have a hilarious routine about how bad her own manager was because it was her.
Right. So there's some interesting things that go on with the environment and how it all ties in together. But you're going to be coming into one of those environments that we like to refer to as toxic. And specifically, it has a lot of toxic masculinity in it because you're going to be dealing with people. Well, you won't be dealing with skis, thank God. But you're still going to be dealing with people like skis. And there's a lot of them that come across as, oh, he's a nice guy. How are you going to deal with some of these people that come in that, oh, he's a nice guy, but then turn around and say things like women are chattel?
I took the first one. You go.
How am I going to deal with somebody who says that women are chattel? Like this, you've just described my entire career.
Okay.
Working in retail and corporate management. Like I've worked with many, and it's all men, some women, but who have, just, oh God. I remember I was pregnant with my first child. And working has always been important to me, to be self-sufficient, even in my marriage. I conceived of an idea where I could, because of the type of office that I was in, moved really quickly and needed some hands-on management, that I would stay at home only full-time for a month. And then the next 2 months, I would work part-time so that I could still have some maternity leave, right? Mm-hmm. I go into my boss. I'm like 8 months pregnant. I go into my boss and I'm like, hey, I have an idea about maternity leave. And he says no. And I'm like, excuse me, what did you think I was going to ask? And he's like, we all talked about it. And I know you're going to ask to work from home. And the answer is no. And I'm like, who told you that? Why would you assume that? I was actually offering to work more.
Did you quit?
No.
Do you wish you did?
No, I'm really good at my job. And his opinion didn't matter. And it has never mattered. Everywhere that I've ever worked, that particular opinion has not held me back from being effective at my work. Good.
One of the things that I think is and it does come from a little bit of how are you going to deal with this? Because I know how I would deal with this, but my proximity to privilege is really weird. Because I'm a cisgendered white male. I am also bombastic and don't care.
Yeah. Well, right. So to answer your question, I don't engage with ridiculous notions like that. There's nothing to argue. Mm-hmm. There's nothing I could say to change his mind about that. What I do is I focus on
to change
the issue at hand. Right. But it also makes me really good at negotiating a middle ground.
Oh, that's good. Because Jenna doesn't.
No, but that's where, and this is what we really enjoy about each other as partners on the Democratic team, is that sometimes there is a line and somebody does need to get punched in the face. And I don't always know when that is. She has not assaulted anyone. I just want to be clear. That was a joke. No assaults have happened.
Yeah, because you know who might pick that story up and run with it.
Oh, they're so mean. The Democrats are so mean. They're talking about you're stripping rights away from half the population. You don't get to complain about what's mean or not, GOP.
Yeah. But the nice thing is we check each other, right? So I'll counsel her. I'm like, okay, there is a way we can find a solution and gain allies.
Right.
And then she'll come across and, at some points and say, listen, this is not something we can negotiate. And I'll be like, yeah, you're right.
Fair enough. We did get a note from Jocelyn Nightstep.
Who's one of our great, super amazing organizers here in Great Falls.
Nice. So we do have the Chaos Crew in Billings. We have Chaos Crew 2, Electric City Boogaloo up in Great Falls. We're very excited about that. In Helena, we just have Chaos. It's not really a crew. It's more a state of mind.
I love it.
So there were a couple other rulings that came out, and one of them is really interesting that I saw, and it was the removal of Miranda rights.
I know. No one's talking about that.
Right. So I wanted to bring it up. So what are your thoughts on it, Melissa from Great Falls?
That sucks and that's horrible, and we already have a problem with our police, and this is wrong. I mean, I can't believe that people just kind of snoozed about that. For our police department here in the city, our police department breeds people like Jesse Slaughter. So we have a great deal of problems here, and we went through. There's a Democratic organizer here, Helena Levick, who ran in 2020, and she's a data scientist. She's a PhD chemist, and she went through all the records she could get from the police department about illegal stops, not being read your rights, just all of this. And of course, we have quite a large urban Native population here, and they get stopped disproportionately to their amount of actual people that live here. And so the white people just do the craziest stuff on the streets. But if you look Native, or if your car looks a little not so nice, you get pulled over right away. And this is just so dangerous, because we're already at this point where we have this problem when you're supposed to be read your rights, and kids don't know. And I think too, like we're going to have situations like that are happening, in Black America, where people are, and this happens like it's happened in Missoula, where you pull these kids over. They know they're not going to be read their rights. They know their lives are in danger. And what are they going to do? They're going to run. And then when they run, they get shot and they get killed. And it's just, I'm just flabbergasted that this is sort of just fallen off the radar. Oh, it's totally fine that you don't have to have your Miranda rights read to you. What? That's like fascism. We just said fascism is okay, people. Let the police just do whatever the hell they want. So
the entire reason we have Miranda rights is because because the people the police were dealing with did not understand their rights, and is beyond frustrating. I'm with you.
Yeah. So we're going to have problems in Great Falls. We're going to have real because they're already just, this is good news for us.
It'll be the same here.
Yeah. When that one came down, I didn't even realize that it was in front of the Supreme Court. Somehow I had missed it. In amongst all the other bullshit that's been happening in the pandemic. A few things happening.
Well, and let me just add too, I'm sorry, Kevin, so, there's just this relentless drumbeat about fentanyl. And I know it's bad. And we're losing people here. People have died. It's not good. But that's going to be the excuse. We are saving these children from, we have reefer madness going on here from a certain faction of Republicans that are Cascade County Republicans who say all this stuff about marijuana. And because they're trying to get it marijuana taken out of our county and out of our city, not have it be legal at all anymore. And they're going to use the marijuana and the fentanyl to just stop everybody and really take away your rights, because drugs.
Right. And the war on drugs, let's be clear, drugs won.
I know. I shouldn't laugh because it's really
the war on terror. Hate to tell you this, the terrorists seem to have done better.
Yeah, the war on women, we're not winning.
Yeah,
not yet. But I think, and here's the thing: having met a few women who don't like being told what to do anytime, let alone in something that they consider absolutely and legitimately their purview, I don't think that ends well for anybody. That's a lot like the dog caught the car. I don't know if you know this, the car is still going to run over the dog. It ended badly.
Yeah.
I mean, you could ask Mitt Romney how it ended for his dog.
I was explaining to my kids the other day about first wave, second wave, third wave feminism, and how
probably do that for the audience, because some Republicans are going to watch this and they'll be like, "We didn't even know there was more than one."
Well, it started with the right to vote, just to refresh everyone. Second wave happened in, the 70s. My husband piped in and he's like, Roe v. Wade. And I'm like, well, it wasn't just Roe v. Wade. It was the right to own property and the right to have credit. And, it was
right to be seen as
all
human.
Of equal pay, which had been codified in law that companies could pay women less and should pay women less post World War II. So, second wave feminism was about way more than just body autonomy. It was true adult independence. What I think, and what I remember from the 80s and 90s too, is that, there was this general attitude that since women have gained these things, now everything's equal and we got lax. Now we're losing those things. So we're back to where we were after first wave feminism. And now third wave's going to be like, I guess we have to do this again.
And we should finish the job.
And yes.
Yeah,
and that's what we know now, is that we can't hold our punches.
And this is the thing that I keep pointing out. I pointed out to the white gays, and I pointed out to the white women. What happened was and I'm including myself in this group, although I don't think I did it, but I'm part of the group, so I own the responsibility for it. We got lackadaisical. We're like, well, I got mine. I don't understand why it's not done. Blah, 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 blah. No, that's not how this works.
Right.
It is important to get everything together and do it for everyone, because if you don't do it for everyone, eventually it falls apart. We've got Brandy on the line. Let's put this in. It is important to acknowledge how race fit into each of those waves, and why enduring that aspect is a huge part of why we are here today. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what I just said. And Brandy's like, and Kev is on it. Because Brandy and I have had lots of conversations about this. And she's like, and don't fucking forget. I'm like, I got it.
Yeah. And I think that's the critical component to this next wave of feminism, is that it has to be intersectional.
Yeah.
Or
absolutely.
we are repeating the mistakes of the past.
Well, and that's, I think, one of the things that's happening on the other side is they are repeating their mistakes with, we're going to oppress this group and nobody's going to care. We're seeing that's not true. And with Billings, with Drag Queen Story Hour, they're like, we're going to tell them that these people are terrible and they're awful and they're destroying kids and the zoo is in trouble and blah, blah, blah. And the exact opposite happened in fucking Billings. And that's amazing, and we need more of that.
Yeah. And we also had conversations too, not just intersectionality within the causes too, because we've all, like how I brought in clean air and clean water when we're talking about fertility, because we have always been off in our little silos. So the environment people are doing their thing, and they're fighting because and here's the reproductive rights people over here fighting and doing this and trying to abandoning the states and only working on the federal level, and and here's the come on, give me another cause, racial justice, they're doing something else, and we're all not talking to each other, and we're all not working. And honestly,
then you have education, and then you have unions, and then you have all the people that are dealing with minority rights and civil rights and all those different people. And there is some little crossover in the Venn diagram as a bunch of circles, but what it isn't is a unified voice going, these are the fucking things.
Right.
You know who has the unified voice, though, is the natives.
Do they?
Native, Indigenous, and Native Americans. They are integrated. They are the water protectors. They are the fire keepers. They are fighting for racial equality.
Mm-hmm. And economic
That's
justice.
a real example that we should be looking to, is that all of these things concern each other.
That's right. And we should talk, too, about the tribal sovereignty little bomb that Otis dropped.
And that's interesting. I think that's interesting on two levels. One, it's interesting because it's shitty, as per many of the things that were 6-3 by this Supreme Court. But the other part of it is it reversed a decision that was literally made by the Supreme Court 2 years ago.
No.
It's like, do you all know where you're going?
No. I mean, does anybody know who brought that? I don't really know who brought that case forward. I mean, I know it had something to do with Gorsuch, didn't it?
The original one was with Gorsuch. I'm going to put this up because I really like the conversation.
Okay.
A lot of this is because when progressive people of color speak up and tell us what they need, we are too prone to telling them they're being too aggressive and to sit down and wait their turn. Yes, and we're awful about that. And what we need to do is sit down, sit on our hands, shut the fuck up, and listen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on board.
I will tell you this. I have become I'm going to go off on a complete tangent. Just bear with me. I've become a huge fan of TikTok. 2 reasons. One, there's a lot of really funny creators on there, which make very interesting stuff. And they're getting seen and doing interesting things that are starting to blow up and be really big, which is great. But the other part is there is a Black and Indigenous creator group that's out there that if you get in and follow them, you learn the coolest things. Excuse me. And you see just amazing pieces of art, great discussions, different viewpoints, different ideas, different ways of seeing the world. And it's all right there in front of you. And it's not filtered through any of the bullshit of, we can't put that in a book because books are only for burning. Okay, George. And it's refreshing to follow some of those. So I highly recommend, if you get on TikTok, the first thing you do is find Black, Indigenous, queer, and multi of those people to follow that you would not normally follow in your life. They're not people you're going to meet in Great Falls, very white. Not people you're going to meet in Helena, very white. Billings, I hate to say this, very white. But there are, and I've actually become friends with several of them and had conversations with them, and it's really, really, really cool to find out how much of how they see the world is so different and so colored by the racism that is absolutely invisible to me if I don't look for it. Because it doesn't, and this is the thing that kills me when I'm talking to my white friends about how the world is still racist. They're like, but I don't see it. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's the fucking problem. You don't see it, so you're not willing to fix it.
Well, yeah, the argument I get all the time too is like, but I wasn't alive when the bad stuff happened. So it's not my responsibility now. And I'm just like, God, okay.
But you still benefit from it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, I didn't. I struggled. I had this, I had that. I had all these terrible things happen to me. No. And it's just really shocking. And I guess it's not shocking. That's not what I mean. But it's just,
I always felt
a lot of time thinking of how you really counteract that narrative.
Yeah.
You know,
I always felt like those individual struggles should make us better allies, not shut us down from that.
Well, yeah, it's just like, well, this is two things like with women. So one is like, well, listen, I didn't have all these great things. You know, I didn't have choice. I didn't have this. I had to bear all these children. I had to do all this. I just struggled. I had to have terrible health care. My womb is a mess and all. So you have to suffer too. That you hear that from women all the time. I had to suffer.
We hear that from people about student loans. Well, I paid my student loan. You should have to pay off yours. Okay. You ran naked down a hallway in the dark with Lego all over the floor doesn't mean that I'm going to make anybody else do it. That was but it shouldn't have happened to you, and we're going to fix it.
Yeah, I agree. The student loan thing makes me nuts because guess what? You also didn't have predatory lenders buying up your loans and then charging you ungodly amounts of interest.
You also had more affordable education.
Yes, because
it used to be free.
Because it gets back to our whole thing about Northern Montana College and Eastern Montana College. You know, hey, it used to be that you actually had an education that was worthwhile, and now we don't even have schools there. We have satellites of the main campuses where we were supposed to save money because they were going to reduce administration, which has more than tripled in the 30 years that I've been out of school.
Yeah, my dad had a lot to say about that because he was still working at Northern when they were making this transition, and he was furious. And he made a lot of noise about it. Of course, wasn't on the Board of Regents, had no say. But yeah, it's a nightmare. It's wrong. It's totally stupid, dumb. And then the amount of money that the legislature has constantly said we don't really need to give to the universities.
Well,
they cut and cut and cut and cut.
I just don't understand.
And then they ask for the professors to work for below minimum wage because it's for the good of mankind. Like, they still got to eat, man.
Yeah. You know, it's for the greater good. We're going to tax, and every time you put a fence on public land, we're going to charge you $100 million for doing it, Greg. And that money is going to go to a school that isn't going to have a building with your name on it. Just because.
Just because.
That's what we're going to do.
You know, it'd be really fun if, like, some rogue band of students started pasting a bunch of Gianforte's the photos they take in jail all over the building.
Mugshot. The word you're looking for is mugshot.
Thank you. Total brain fart. Yeah, if a bunch of his mugshots just started appearing all over the building.
Refer to it as Mugshot Hall.
Yeah.
And be done with it. Because that's easier to say anyway. And that will become the official name over time. And everybody will be like, but we don't understand it. And then we get to tell the story.
I like
and
it.
I feel like that's an appropriate use of social interactions.
Yes.
I'm going to ask once again of our audience to chime in if there's anything that they would like to talk about, because I do like taking questions from the audience because they always come up with really great things. But while we're still going on this, how are your campaigns?
Good. I like, is there any other answer than good or great?
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, so my worry with all of this, because of course I didn't make it through the primary, so I was like, phew, I'm done. So I got to pack up. I have one sign left. It's in my window. And it was very nice to be able to be like, oh, I don't have to worry about going out and meeting people or schedule things, da-da-da-da-da. But I know how often that is a desire for people after the primary. It's like, oh, it's summer, I should take time off. And I will tell you, that is not the answer. So how is it going?
No, so yeah, I won my primary and, just immediately started campaigning for the general. So yeah, I did take a little bit of time off the doors because I do a lot of community organizing and still, because that's my background. So it's hard for me to walk away from that. And going to lots of community meetings, because people keep saying to me, how did you beat Brad? Brad was, in the legislature forever. He has his huge name. His family owns, Square Butte. And how did you do it? And I said, well, the first rule of politics, which people will tell you, is show up. And I went, the minute the 2020 thing was over, because I did lose that race for House District 20, I just started getting involved in my community, and I'm involved in so many different organizations, and I show up at all those meetings, and I'm talking to people all the time, and I'm at their neighborhoods, I'm at their events that they have, and that makes a huge difference. And that's what I really did a lot of in June. And now I'm on the doors. And that's, we have the super aggressive ground game. And, it's nice too, some ways, in having a primary, because, I mostly talked to strong Dems. So now I don't have to, go that route so much. I go right to the people that are more interesting. And we've been having here's the thing that I found already, and it's a little bit of a problem, is that people are just dying to talk to people about stuff. They don't have anybody to talk to. because we've just lost that civic infrastructure. So I show up and they're like, I want to talk to you and I want to tell you about this and I'm going to tell you about this. And they just, and there's 20 minutes and you're like, oh my God, they're going to be so mad at me at the MDLCC again, because here I've only knocked 5 doors and I've been out for 2 hours. But, but I feel like this is the energy that people have right now. They're just desperately like, thank you so much. I can't talk to my family anymore about this. And you're a person that I can talk to. And I just do so much listening. And so that's kind of where my campaign is right now. And it's been interesting and kind of exciting.
Yeah, exactly the same for me too. I've been really involved in community organizations, just being really visible. I've run into my opponent several times. He is very politely patronizing. To be fair, he's pretty enmeshed in the community and I am relatively a noob. But yeah, same thing, that deep conversation, deep canvassing, I think they might call it too, taking the time to find that common ground with people and let them listen. It's a little bit like therapy in 5 minutes. Yeah. But it's really effective. And for me too, it's a little bit of a long game too. Like, I'm going to win in November. Watch me. But a lot of these people, the only information they get from the outside world is on Fox News until they talk to somebody who's like, well, ask them questions, ask them about their personal experience. How does this apply to what you know? And I think that is going to stay longer than whatever the latest news cycle is.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a human connection thing. And one of the, Brady put this out. I'll read it for those people at home. That's what I heard working doors to. The state party should be investing more money into field teams. That's what won 2016 for Bullock. Field teams are great. Honestly, I think the biggest impact that I had with my campaign, and again, I lost, but that's okay, was in meeting people, because there are so many people who, like, they'll see a name and they'll be like, oh, maybe do a cursory search on Google. And with me, they're going to see a lot of, all the random shit that I do. They're like, who is this guy? But getting out and meeting them and actually talking to them, you all of a sudden have these people that are now not just engaged with you in, oh, this is the same struggle. You understand it. You have a common ground. You have all these things. But they become the people who are more willing to go, oh, hey, there's this other thing a friend of mine was talking about that I think you might be interested in. Here's this piece of information that you need to know. And here's this person if you ever give them a call. There was a lot of that went out. And there was a lot of that second and third person telephone that was happening where it was like, hey, I'm going to give this person a call. I heard from this person who's apparently a neighbor of yours that you're having some issues with this. Could you tell me about it? There were a lot of people that I talked to that were dealing with abandoned copper assets by CenturyLink. And it's super fun to talk to them because I know so much about that. Like, it's insane the amount of information in my ears. But in talking to them, they didn't know that they could even reach out to the PSC for help because nobody had told them.
No.
And it was so great to be able to say, okay, here's the phone number that you call. Here's some of the things that you say, and here's the wording, and here's who you be nice to, and here's who you can yell at.
Yell at Randy.
Right on.
He's asleep. You have to speak really loud.
Right. Use an air horn to wake him up first. It's an appropriate response. But that's just it. There's so many times when there's just gaps in knowledge that can't be filled because they're never going to ask. They don't even know what they don't know. And then when you get them and you say, hey, what's bothering you today that you would like to see the government, which most people hate, actually step in and do the right thing and fix it, and they'll give you such interesting answers. I mean, it's literally it blows my mind how often it is the thing that's on the top of their mind right now is the thing that's going to make them a voter for you because you can engage with them. And so talking to them and having that moment of human interaction. And I think that's where, we lost really hard with the pandemic because there wasn't a lot of that one-on-one human interaction. Mm-hmm. What I think is interesting is that the human interaction also happens to be when people see me interacting with someone that they know. it doesn't require me to talk to everybody, because even in a district the size, District 5 for the PSC is the smallest of them. There's no way I'm going to get to all the people in there in the time of a thing. But there is a chance that at every event, if I talk to 4 people, 13 other people saw me do it and still got most of the benefit of that. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I'm going to toss this in here because this is, we brought supplies to the Three Forks strike, and a lot of them said they were voting blue for the first time because of how many Dems showed up and talked to them like worthwhile people. And that's just it. They absolutely are worthwhile people. And strikes are important. Also, helping people. It's so amazing. Like all of the things, it cracks me up how incredibly selfish Montanans can be and how incredibly generous they can be at the same time. When it's literally just they're putting a color on something, and it's oh, are you a Democrat? Now I don't like you. Versus, oh, you need help and you're a Montanan, I will help you, but I know nothing about your politics. And it's like, why are those two things happening in the same head so often? It's like, because there are plenty of times I will help you if you're in need of help, and I see you. I will help you regardless of your politics, unless you're Brad Sheeta, and I couldn't identify him by face, so I probably would still help him, and then find out later on and be like, oh, helping me.
Oh, but Kevin, all those karma points, woohoo!
It's the whole thing of, do you want to sell yourself as a good person, or do you want to be a good person? And I'd rather be a good person, and that's, everybody that we've had on the show, we've been really, really lucky because everybody that we've had on the show has been really, really cool about discussing politics and getting into the details and the weeds of some of these topics. And these topics are not comfortable all the time. I mean, talking about Roe v. Wade and abortions and vaginas and health and all the things that go into it, yeah, we're talking about some of them in terms that are not comfortable for people. There's a reason for that. These are not comfortable decisions. They aren't simply a black and white that you can just throw out there and that's going to cover everything perfectly. And if you approach government that way, you end up making government a tool that destroys the people around it, because it becomes a weapon for others to use against people that they don't like.
Yeah.
And this is where, in everything that goes on with people that I talk to that were completely against me politically, and there are lots of them, but I love the ones that I got to talk to that they were like, well, I'm still going to vote for you because I know that you're going to get things done and you're never going to create something that's going to attack me individually. I'm like, yeah, because I know that shit can be turned around on me. I've seen it happen. So not my best interest. And, I hope that the voters in Billings and Great Falls who have the chance to both vote for Melissa Smith step up and do it, because the legislature needs Melissa Smith in it.
We do. I mean, Melissa and I are going to hit that town like the Wonder Twins.
Wonder Twin powers activate, form of a bill, shape of a majority vote.
You go.
Yeah, you wonder how we're going to deal with the toxic environment. Well, when we get there, it won't be toxic.
There you go.
It would be really nice if we elected non-toxic people to the legislature. I had one of my first stand-up comedy bits. I was in Missoula, and I asked people, I was like, how many of you voted? And the whole audience cheered, and I was like, you're liars. I know that's not true. And then I said, and how many of you hate Helena? And all of them raised their hand. And I was like, why do you hate Helena? And somebody yelled out, because there's always assholes from there. And I was like, oh, tell me what you've heard. And one of them goes, well, in the last session, I was like, hold up, let me bring you right back down to reality, because I will agree with you. There are assholes in the session, but that's you sending them to my town.
Yeah.
Stop doing that. Vote for good people.
Well, this is something that I read on the day of the primary, which was really disheartening. I don't remember if it was a USA Today story or something, but it said that only 21% of people that run for public office are in it because they want to help people. And that means 79% are in it for the wealth, the power, the whatever, an axe to grind. And we have to turn that around. We have to be 79% of people are the good people that want to help people and help their communities and make government work. And the 21, there'll always be, the weirdos, and go after that and look at those people instead of the other way around, because of course you're going to be disengaged in politics if 79% of the people aren't there for you. That's
I
crazy.
must be a noob because I cannot fathom that. I can't.
Well, and also, how is your life?
Sorry, I missed that. Sorry.
How sad is your life that you're like, oh, in order to make my life better, I'm gonna go fuck everybody else over? Like, oh my God, just like be an oil baron.
Given the behavior of our current leadership, that is probably more true than I like to admit.
You mean our current lack of leadership? So I will add. Right? I will add one thing to this as we're winding up. Here's the thing that everybody should know as a voter. You can look up and see who's donated to any candidate in our public reporting system. In Montana, it's called CERS. It's CERS. If you just literally type in Montana space CERS into Google, it will come up. You can log in. You don't even have to log in to do a search and get some information on it. Mm-hmm. The first thing I will tell you to do is look up any single person that you've talked to and make sure that at least 85% of the money that they have spent in their campaign came from public donations. That it did not come from them putting $100,000 into their race, or $1 million, or $9 million. Mm-hmm. Because if they're buying their seat with their own money, which they're allowed to do, I think it's ridiculous, but they are allowed to do it. If they are doing that, they are not in this to do right by you. They are in this to gain power and ruin things for other people.
Yeah.
If they cannot get people to invest in them and say, I would like to see this person elected, they should not get your vote. And there are lots of people in these races. I will point out that I could do this one off the top of my head because I happen to know it. In the PSC race, on the Republican side, there was no candidate that made that level. On the Democrat side, there was one candidate who made that level. He did not win the primary. But in talking with the candidate that went on, he knows he has to actually do public fundraising. And he knows why. I'm like, you should have been doing it before, but, it's a thing. But I'm not going to vote for anybody who buys their seat. If they want to buy their seat, they can buy my vote. Put money in my pocket, motherfucker.
Fair.
Yep.
What did Brandy put in? I think the figure is actually about how many people believe politicians are in it for the people. Oh, that might be true, but that's even worse because that means that politicians are not clear about why they're running, which means they're not communicating, which means they're not talking to the people. They're talking to the money. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which feels like a fair thing. So I want to thank you both. We're coming up on the end of this. We've got about 2 minutes left. Really quick, Melissa Smith for HD23 can be found on Twitter at Melissa Smith for
44.
Yeah, Kevin, which Melissa Smith are you talking about?
He just froze.
Melissa for HD23. Oops. I froze. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, it's when you talk about the Melissas, things can get all wacky.
You have discovered a portal.
Yes, exactly. Melissa Smith is disruptive.
They're actually the same person through different time. On Twitter, Melissa for HD23 is Melissa Smith in Great Falls. On Twitter at MS Missa, Miss Missa,
yes.
MSMISSA.
I did start a different Twitter, but I never write on it, so I'm just going with the Ms. Missa. Well, he's frozen, so there's that.
Yeah, it's just us. So quick, let's talk about Kevin. No, just kidding.
Yeah, right.
I don't think he can hear us either.
Nice. Brandy has had some wonderful comments tonight. I just want to throw that out there since people can still hear us.
Yeah,
I think people could hear you. I think it was me that was just having a problem, which is sad because I am the internet company. Probably need to go check on that. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show. We will love to have you back anytime. Next week's Pride, so it's going to be a super queer show. It's game night, so I might be doing it from a different location and inviting people in to talk about what they want to do. So if you want to be on that, that would be fun. Everybody out there, I am super excited for where we are headed. And yeah, thanks for joining me tonight. It has been a delightful evening. I'm going to throw up the little song. I really need theme music. I need a theme song. You guys have to hum now. Da-da-da-da.